Well, just a bit of club business before we move on to that. This week we're doing a guest speaker, obviously. So the asset shuffle we're gonna push one more week. So you've got one more week to put your finishing touches on the projects that you've been working on.
Yes,
But
sir.
other than that, that's like the only business we got. So Herman, if you are ready, would you like to take it away?
Sure. I'm just
Awesome.
waiting for Discord to recognize my screen sharing. There we go.
Ah, yes.
Let's go.
Hello, can everyone see the slide? My experience as a student developer.
Yep.
Yes, I can.
Awesome.
Yes, sir.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name's Herman, and I'm here to talk about my experience as a student developer. Excuse me, Chrome. Yes, there we go. All right. So first, who am I? I'm Herman. I am a technical artist and animator, but also I do some programming, graphic design. I did some producing last year. I also did a Oh no. Hold on. Sorry, computer dings.
Oh, good thing we can't see it.
All right. All right. I did a little bit of sound design last year. I also designed a lot of puzzles, as well as just like more. In general, I've touched every aspect of game design except for music production and publishing. And so I graduated from UC Santa Cruz a few months ago with a degree in computer science, computer game design. I was an art officer for UCSC's Game Design and Art Collaboration Club for 2 years, and over the course of 4 years, I've worked on 17 big game-related projects as an undergrad. And so, just some highlights for my portfolio. Here are some of them. So you can see I work on like a wide variety of games because I believe in the positive social impact games can have. So like up in the top left, Juanito El Nahuelito, the game leads wanted to what is it? Make a game about their Latin American heritage. I have a game about PTSD. I have a lot of games about making friends and love. And so I want to contribute to all of these the positive social impact by animating and breathing life into the characters, making it feel immersive. And so you can see I have a lot of experience as a student game developer, and I wanted to give some advice that I've noted from over the years from my own experiences and watching other people. And just as a note, this isn't comprehensive. Just hopefully these tips and advice are not things you'll commonly see in other tutorials and guides, but also some advice you may have heard, but it doesn't hurt to reiterate. However, you may say, some advice seems contradictory or factually wrong. Well, I'll say game design is a balancing act between many extremes, and it's very hard to define what these extremes are in words. It largely comes down to intuition and experience. So, yeah. I'm also not an expert in everything, but I do have experience. So, first thing, general advice for game devs of all kind. I want to first say that being multidisciplinary is great. From a programmer's perspective, you can design your game architecture to make asset implementation easier. That way, artists can just directly plug in their art into the game, and you're good. From an artist perspective, understanding how an engine works and how it interprets your art assets will make it so that you can make your art specific to technical specs, as well as understanding a little bit of everything makes it so you understand what's possible from all the other disciplines. But also, you don't have to be an expert in literally everything. You just need a base foundational knowledge, and that's fine. Then the next bullet point is, don't give up the first time you try something. Like, I've tutored a lot of 3D modeling classes at UCSC, and there's always like a handful of students that at the end of quarters like, I hate 3D modeling, and yeah, it always makes me sad. But like I'll recognize they had hardships. Maybe it was external factors. Maybe the way the professor was teaching them wasn't great. Oh, also I can't see Discord chat, so speak up if there's something wrong. But yeah, sometimes it's external factors. Sometimes it's the way the professor teaches the class, or maybe it's because they can't handle deadlines. That's all fine, but just don't give up the first time you try something. Give it a chance, a second, third, fourth, fifth time, whatever it takes. However, I will recognize sometimes something isn't right for you. Like for me, I cannot memorize history facts. That's just something innate in me, and I don't know. I don't think no matter how many times I try it, I can't recite history. So
Dude,
I feel
history's
that.
hard,
yeah,
man.
sometimes just something. Huh? What?
History's hard.
What? Yeah. But it's like sometimes you just need to recognize when something isn't for you. Like that might be on your third or fifth try on trying something, but just don't give up on the first time. Is like everyone's different, everyone learns differently. Just recognize that fact. And then also, don't be afraid to fail. Take the first step. Failing usually doesn't mean the end of the world. You can fix that mistake and then move along. Or if it's inconsequential, just recognize the mistake exists and then just go around it, do something else. But usually, I see people don't try something because they're afraid that they're going to make mistakes or that they can't do it. And it's like, you're not going to learn if you don't do it. So don't be afraid to fail. Failing is part of the learning experience. Yeah. And lastly, ask for help. Being ashamed of failing only slows production and your own growth. Like, other people's insights are very valuable in the sorts of work in work that you do. If I also see people like, oh man, I don't know what to do here. I need to Google it before I ask anyone. And like, okay, that's fair. But if there's an expert on your team in like with or with familiarity with your own project, you should ask them for help. And actually, sorry, I'm trying to remember. I had another point about this. Being ashamed. Yeah, we can move on. I can't think of it. Maybe I'll think of it later.
No, I get your point. Like,
Sorry, I'm not the best presenter.
you're good.
What?
I get your
All
point.
right.
Like it's easier to learn with a mentor, right? Or like someone just
Yeah,
guiding you.
yeah, or with other peers. Like,
Mhm.
what is it? Yeah. All right. So then, being more specific into the field of design, you should when you're designing a game experience, you should design around a 1 minute or a 10-second loop, because like who wants to play 1 hour of not fun game loops? Like that's not great. And if you want to think about loops in general, think about the smallest gameplay loop you can have, and then the loop around that, and then another loop and another loop. So, for example, if we were to design a shooter game, the smallest possible gameplay loop you could have is you shoot your gun at an enemy, at a stationary enemy. You want the gun to feel great when you shoot at it. You want the enemy to collapse in a very satisfying way. Once you get that working, build out a room. Maybe you'll have some cover mechanics. Maybe you want to test. I need to see how dodging the enemy feels. Awesome. When that feels great, then build out a whole level. How does traversing across a big environment feel in your game? Maybe your player's too slow, and then you need to implement some traversal mechanics like a grappling hook. Once you get one level feeling great, then you can start building out other levels, and then eventually you can have an entire campaign, or maybe there's an additional system beyond that that's now another gameplay loop of base management and economy or skill trees, things like that. But just think about loops and how each loop encompasses each other, how they all facilitate back towards the smallest gameplay loop. Second bullet point is be able to design a linear play experience. I often see and hear people get caught up with, I need to make a non-linear play experience because, games are non-linear play experiences. Like, yeah, that totally makes sense, but I get so many people get caught up in that I have to make tons of possibilities, like infinite possibilities, except each one of those possibilities just doesn't feel great to play. And so this ties into the 1 million bowls of oats problems, if any of you have heard of it. Basically, you have 1 million bowls of oats. Theoretically, every single one of those bowls of oats is permutationally unique. You'll have a completely different experience eating each, or not a completely different experience, but you'll have a permutationally unique experience eating each bowl of oats. But to the normal consumer, it's going to be the same experience eating each bowl of oats. So I would recommend you build a design target. If a player only played one loop instance of your game once with no replay, how do you make that feel great? Like, if you have a branching narrative experience, who cares how much the narrative branches out if your player plays it once through and they experience a shitty story? Oh, sorry, Ben, am I allowed to curse?
Try not to.
Yes.
Okay, I'll try not to. But you get the point. Like, who cares about all of these possibilities if it turns out just one way through, it doesn't feel good. So you should have a design target. How, if the player were to play it once, you want that to feel great. And maybe it turns out that by focusing so much on this one branch, you cannot make 20 different endings. You instead can only make 2 or 3. And I think that's fine. Like, you should design for a good experience overall. And then third bullet point is you should scope small. Like, think of building a short story instead of a novel, because then I think your skills can grow more if you work on a narrow, focused project rather than a wide, unfocused project where everything just feels meh. And then I recommend you find inspiration outside of games. Don't let games become an echo chamber of itself. Like you constantly see game descriptions like, this is Skyrim but with guns. Cool, I guess, but it just feels like a rehash.
Yeah.
And so you should find inspiration from movies, books, signs you see outside, real life experiences, real life culture. Make your game feel richer by drawing inspiration from around you, something that you're familiar with. Then your game will start feeling more original and less of a Skyrim with guns. Second bullet
Soulful.
point is, huh? Oh, yes. Like, some games do define genres. I kind of get that, but, like, yeah. You should try inserting originality into games if you want to make them feel good.
Mhm.
Second bullet point is, quantity is not a good feature. You should be very wary of people saying, it'll get better when we add more. So, like, thinking back on the shooter game, you design the first gun, it feels okay to shoot. And someone else says, it'll get better when we add 20 more guns. Does it? Will it? I don't think so. You should hone in your focus on the first gun and then make 3 other guns that are equally amazing, and then you'll have a great feeling shooter game rather than a game that has 20 guns that don't feel great. But also, like, this way of thinking of, it'll get better when we add more, I think that draws your focus away from the actual problems that are present in your game design. And then the last design advice I have is, or actually this isn't the last one, sorry. Last one on this slide is playtest early and frequently. You need to playtest not just for bugs, but issues with your design. Like, is your game fun? But by playtesting a lot, you can iterate on your game design and start moving it closer and closer towards fun. Alright, there we go. Okay. So, as an example of what I have done... Oh no! I just want to right click, please. Alright, loop. I hope it loops, yes. Okay, so what feature should you focus on first? I often go with the approach of player first, then anything that immediately interacts with the player. So, in this example, Cat's Cradle, it's a two-player puzzle co-op game, two cats with opposite gravities, and there's a string that they can use to pull each other. Clearly, the main focus of this game is the yarn, but I can't design the yarn if I don't have the players made, so I gotta make the players, and then I can make the yarn. And then I can work on programming our environment, our scene management, maybe if there's interactable objects in the environment. As well as, I would recommend getting features in first and then tweaking. Like in this case, my first version of the yarn did not feel great. It definitely didn't feel like a yarn. It felt like a block that you're pulling between each other. But the fact that I had this capability of you can pull the players towards each other, that was great. Then later on, I could tweak and fine-tune it. So don't get caught up on making the individual mechanic feel great. Get everything in first and then start fine-tuning. Although there are some exceptions to that. It's a case-by-case basis.
Oh, so are you referring to the bouncing, like the subtle bouncing?
Yeah, that's
I see.
polishing that I did, but there was also other physics things that I had to adjust to make it feel like it's an actual string and not there's a stick in between the players, because that's what's actually happening. There's a stick that I'm turning on and off constantly. Okay, and then moving on to a different field, art. Please don't be afraid to learn a new tool or medium. This ties back into don't be afraid to fail the first time and don't give up. If art programs in general, it's just a ton of buttons. Reorient yourself around what you know and figure out how to do that. If you change one 2D art program to another 2D art program, what do you know? You know how to draw pixels, you know how to change color. Okay, figure out how to do those things, and then slowly, gradually figure out new features. And then also, don't condemn a medium or tool because your first time was bad. I've also seen this a lot as a tutor, and it's also very sad. I think you really hurt yourself as an artist and a developer if you refuse to work with a tool because you don't like it or something. I have tools that I don't like to work with, but I'll work with it if I have to. Yeah. And then also, don't do a grand reveal. Show works in progresses frequently. Waiting until the end only slows production. I've known some people that's I can't show it to the team yet because I haven't added all the coloring and all the highlights. And then when they show it, we're just it's a little too big, and I think maybe you should move the shoulder there. It's you're going to get feedback. You just show works in progress as often as you can. That way you can make these adjustments and spend less time fixing your mistakes. And so this bullet point, iteration is key. It goes to the same thing. Get your art into the game as soon as possible. That way you can discover problems that arise from either the design aspect, the art aspect, whatever it is. So place a sketch, a gray box, whatever. In this case, if you look in the top right, for Bond Wish of the Forest, there's the Creature Collector roguelite. I don't know which one it is. We had placeholder enemies that are just red rectangles and a red rectangle arm that swung to indicate it's attacking you. That was great for playtesting. Players knew, I'm about to be attacked. Awesome, rather than just a cube that sat there and players don't know when it's attacking you. So this is an example of good programmer art that facilitates the design of the game. So whenever you insert programmer art, you should think about it very carefully rather than just something's got to be there. By iterating, I guess I already said that. Find out if your art is functional. Yeah, it's you should find out, oh shit, oh sorry, oh shoot, is the canvas too big, or like, oh, I can't really see the main character against the background. You should find that out as soon as you can. And also, other people's insights are so much helpful. Like, let me slowly boot up all of these GIFs. Okay, so the video on the left, that was the first pass I did for an attack animation, and I posted it, and someone on the team Discord said, wait, that attack goes way too quickly. The player has no time to react to that. It's like, you're right. I totally forgot about that. So then I rescaled keyframe, and then I got to the middle GIF. Then someone else said, what if the little things at the top of the head moved and wiggled? It's like, shoot, you're right. That looks so much better. And so by posting my art, getting feedback, I was able to get to this much better functional and aesthetically pleasing result at the end, rather than like spending all my time by myself to the point that I meet my own standards, posted it on the Discord, and realized, oh shoot, the attack is way too soon, and yeah, just post your art as soon as possible, and you can iterate on people's feedback, and you get a much better product.
Yeah, I remember doing that a lot for game jams. Definitely helps.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so now we're on to the next field of programming. I would highly recommend, once you have a grasp on basic data structures, on like programming syntax, you should learn some architecture design or programming patterns, like in Unity's specific instance, singletons or scriptable objects. Like, these things will make it easier for you to scale your project, to build content, to just work in general. Because you want to be at a place where you're not fighting with your game project, you're not writing bad things. Also, sorry, hold on, my phone slept.
All good. Yo, but I want to plug real quick. Yo, if you want
Yeah?
to learn about scriptable objects, you can refer to Rich's lecture last week.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Hell yeah.
Okay. And so I would also, bullet point number 2, consider engineering pillars. Modularity is good. Dependencies should be minimized. Like your code base should be easy to work with. But there's a bunch of other engineering pillars out there. The biggest one for me is modularity. Third bullet point, looping back to design, focus on the 1-minute gameplay loop. Don't build plans and contingencies for the 1-hour mark of your game when you don't know 1 minute is fun. However, there's an exception of, if you work in a larger team, like, people have got to do things. So, like, you can assign some people on building the skill tree system, and you can assign other people on working on the actual combat system. You could do that, but your main focus definitely should be on that combat system when you're designing your 1-minute gameplay loop, rather than thinking, oh man, 1 hour into the game, the player's going to like encounter a boss fight. We want a boss fight, but you know, you don't have the game, you don't have the combat loop, so you can't design your boss fight.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and so then, part 2, I believe you should burn your prototypes to the ground if you're making a prototype for a long-term game, like a 6-month to 1-year project and more. I believe that prototypes should be hasty, quick, to see if technical limitations exist or if the design is fun. I do not believe prototypes are a good code base. Like, you should not be afraid to refactor your code, your foundations, because it will make your future work so much easier. So in my experience, I've had Silcat, my auto rigger for Blender. Previously, it was very hard-coded to just the spine, the arms, the legs, and the head. I couldn't very easily iterate and add new limbs because it could only do those things. I restructured it in the span of about 2 weeks so that each limb was its own class, and I iterated through a list of defined limbs. That way I can swap them in and out, and it was so much easier to work with. on a second project, also last year, Bond: Wish of the Forest, the Creature Collector roguelite. We built a prototype in about 2 months, and then we continued to build off of that prototype for the rest of the year, and we ran into a ton of problems because we had to write some hard-coded roundabouts that made it really hard to work with, and I wish we didn't do that. Like, I really wanted us to build the game from the ground up with a more stable foundation, but we didn't, and I think we suffered for it. However, that didn't say my teammates are bad. It's just a bad decision we made.
Mm-hmm.
Second bullet point is, I think you guys should name things better. I think that's something that new programmers often fail to do. I prefer longer verbose names. I know some people don't, but I think they're infinitely better than shorter, concise names that its meaning is sometimes lost. So I linked this Bungie technical blog they talk about their own programming razors. I can link it later, but I think it explains it really well, and I think people should take a read into it, even if you're really experienced. And also, just because of naming things, I think that if you have something you don't know the purpose of, that makes your code base a lot harder to work with, so naming things is better. Next bullet point is, don't micro-optimize too soon. So, I think when people micro-optimize, they tend to convolute their code and make it really hard to work with. And that's not a great way to start with, especially if you're a beginner who doesn't understand a lot of things. And honestly, I find you don't need to micro-optimize a whole lot when you're learning. Like, things often just work out perfectly fine. Like a for loop that runs 5,000 times. Oh, hey, it actually didn't have that big of an effect on the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, just yeah.
Premature optimization is the root of all evil.
Yeah, however, that isn't to say you should write 20 nested for loops. Like, do it within reason, do whatever method is easiest to work with, to interface with. Like looping back around at the root of the problem, you just need, or at the root of the problem, you just need to make sure your code base is easy to work with, it's easy to scale, and it's easy to interface with. And then, to tie into that, I prefer the black box model of programming, where I have the section of code that it only cares about its input and its output. Everything that happens inside this black box doesn't care about what's happening on the outside. Everything that's happening on the outside doesn't care about what's happening on the inside except for its output. And also, the benefit of this black box model is that if I swap this black box with another black box that takes in the same inputs and same outputs, the game should run better. Because hopefully I put in a better black box and not a worse black box. And then the last bullet point is something that I heard from a guest speaker in my game AI class, and he phrased it in a way that I've never heard before, but is actually very insightful. To make something modular, make it easily removable. Make your code easily removable, that you can delete lines of code and the game will work, and also it'll be the behavior that you want.
I like that. That's a really good way of putting that.
Yeah, it was actually a really good talk. Unfortunately, that's the only bullet point I remember from the talk. I wish I remembered the other ones. Oh.
Dude, the prototype thing,
So,
the trashing prototypes thing, I think that's just really good in like software design in general.
yeah. And like, also another thing about burning prototypes to the ground, counter argument to that you'll hear is like, but we'll waste so much time just building up from the ground up. It's like, no, the amount of time you invest in making your code base easier to work with will infinitely be better than the time that you save not rewriting the code. And so, moving on to the last discipline, which is production. I recommend you always leave room at the end of a development cycle for QA and polish. So if you have 20 weeks to build something, don't plan to build a main feature of your game in week 20. Have all of your main features finished by week 10. Things will go wrong. You will need to fine tune. You need time to make it feel good. I personally prefer building games that have a lot less features, but great features, rather than a game that is very wide and all the features are just kind of half finished and don't feel great. And so that ties into first draft does not equal final draft, despite what we have learned in school. Like, the first time you do something is not going to be instantaneously what you want most of the time, like 95% of the time. You will need time to work on it, polish it, whatever it is. And so then you want to be able to course correct early on. Like, if it turns out in week 10, like, shoot, this feature isn't working out. You need to cut it out of the game. You need to cut down on scoop when you can, or like, if the feature is taking a long time and it's essential to the game design, what other features can you cut out and scope down just to ensure that you can finish on time as well as you can polish and QA. And so then that goes into another thing of, if you don't have the manpower to do something, don't blame your team, cut down on your scope. Make it so that your team has less to do. And so now part 2. Be open to critique and feedback, which is like something I've touched on a lot of other times in the presentation. Other people's insights are infinitely valuable to what you're doing. You need to be open to receive critique as well as being able to give critique. Like, there could be a whole presentation about feedback, but like in general, first ask, hey, do you want feedback? 2, structure your feedback in a way that doesn't hurt the other person's feelings. Like, don't just go and say, like, it's a piece of crap. Like, point out, hey, I think this part's wrong. It's making me feel weird. I don't feel comfortable with this, or I think it's a little oblong. But hey, I think you did this arc really well. You know, point out good things, point out bad things, be fair. Trust your teammates, be empathetic. Like, oh shit, I don't have speaker notes about that. Oh well. Trust your teammates, be empathetic. If your teammate says, like, I'm busy with the final exam this week, or hey, my grandma died, trust them that actually happened, and, you know, adjust your project accordingly. Drawing back to another bullet point of, if you have less manpower now, cut down on scope. And as well as for trusting your teammates, if your teammate says, hey, I think it would be better if we do this thing, let go of your ego and trust them and try it out within reason. If it turns out they don't know what they're speaking about, point out why they're wrong and then continue on with the project. But in general, trust your teammates, like, listen to what they have to say, believe in them, like, be friends with them, you know, be a good person. And then third bullet point, I think I've touched on some things. If you can't do your task or need more time, don't ghost. It's like, say to your team, hey, I can't do it, and someone else needs to pick it up, or I need more time to do this. That way, whoever your producer is can then appropriately scope down the project to make sure that the whole project can be finished, even if this one little feature is not. As well as, if you're having trouble with a task, you should ask for clarification. Like, hey, Ben, I don't know. When you asked for this turnaround sheet, I don't know what a turnaround sheet means or what specs you want with the turnaround sheet. Could you be more specific? Could you give me more examples? Or, like, hey, Ben, you told me I need to make this a behavior tree system, but I don't know how to program a behavior tree. Do you have any resources you could give me so that I could learn about behavior trees? Things like that.
Ben got
Like, communicate with people. Like, don't be like, I know lots of people are afraid of, like, oh no, like, my team's going to hate me because I can't do this, what they've asked me for. No, communicate with them. Like, progress the project forward. As well as another small thing of when you have meetings, you should have goals. I know there are tons of meetings I've had where we just have lots of detours, we meander, we talk about other things, and then it's like, shoot, nothing happened in this meeting, no decisions were made. At the top of a meeting, you should have a goal and say, at the end of this meeting, we're going to decide on the exact prototype mechanic or the exact mechanics we want programming to prototype so that we can see if our game design works, or we need an exact list of assets for our art team to make. Things like that. You should have a goal so that, things get done. And last, and certainly not least, my last production tip, don't crunch. These 3 quotes are real quotes that I got from my postmortem with Cat's Cradle. You can see, if you read them, we crunched 3 days before our game showcase. We pulled all-nighters, and we felt incredibly bad throughout. And I want to say, even though we ended up making a game, this crunch was a result of poor planning beforehand, because in the third quote, we kept pushing tasks back and back rather than cutting out features. We just kept pushing them back and back, and that wasn't good. It ultimately hurt our mental health. It did not feel good. And then also, for all of these all-nighters, I know of people whose health has actually been affected. They have real health problems, liver problems, heart problems, and they're 1 or 2 years older than me. So I would highly recommend, do not crunch. Do not contribute to the crunch culture if you can. And also, I just have some last remarks. People are more valuable than the project. You should treasure your friends, prioritize your friends' health, prioritize your team's health over the project. If the project crashes and burns, make sure people don't hate each other for it. Make sure people don't actually die over it. Seriously, don't die for a project. Your mental health and physical health. Build what you're passionate about. You should build something fun, but also, be careful about building your magnum opus. You can become burnt out and tired of that idea due to inexperience. As well as, don't copycat things just because it's trendy. I personally don't think that's a good trend in games. And there also, just remember, there isn't one way to do things. There is no one right way to do things. Everything has its pros and cons to varying degrees. It's your job to make the decisions and choose the methods that minimize the cons based on your situation. Everything that I've said, I think, is generally true, but there are always exceptions to things. You just need to choose whatever one is correct for your circumstance. As well as, you should always be learning. As well as, do you have any questions? But before you ask any questions, I need to get some water.
No
Well,
problem.
while you're getting water, we should all clap and
Yes.
snap.
Yeah.
Claps and snaps in the chat for Herman.
That was excellent.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
This is very well put together, and this is a lot of good content. I took notes.
Thanks.
So
Yeah, I can share the slides with you guys later if you'd like.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and that link on the Bungie name.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because I don't know about y'all, but naming a variable is the hardest part of programming sometimes.
Yeah, the Bungie blog actually touches on that a bit. Not into too much detail, but it gives some insights into naming things wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, honestly,
Also,
I feel like your presentation could have been presented in our senior project class.
Oh,
Yeah.
we're taking a class on senior design, just
Yeah.
software
I see.
development. This is just
Yeah,
applicable to projects.
over at UCSC, we also have a senior capstone project, which is we work on a game for an entire year, so 3 quarters. And we have a thing called external collaborators, where people from outside the senior capstone project can help contribute to individual teams, which includes freshmen, sophomores, juniors, other seniors from other majors. And so I've worked on senior capstone projects my entire time at UCSC, so I've worked on like 6 of them over the course of 4 years. And yeah, that's
Ooh.
a lot of my
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, I have a ton of questions because
Oh, sure.
I come from DigiPen, and I really like hearing your experience at USC. I'd like to compare.
Oh,
and contrast there.
UCSC, sorry. We're not USC.
I'm sorry, I'm super dyslexic.
No, it's okay,
I
it's okay.
always get acronyms wrong. But yeah, so I have a lot of questions, but I don't want to hog the time. So everybody else should go first.
Sure.
Yeah, anyone else? Anyone have any questions?
Or if there's any questions in chat.
I don't have necessarily questions, but I just wanted to reiterate that thank you for your time because that was an incredible presentation. I
Oh yeah,
learned
no problem.
and I'm in the position. I'm very fortunate that I have a lot of people who come to me, being like please teach me, and I'm like I'm not that great. There's people who are better than me. Clearly, I wrote down 4 pages of notes here. I learned a lot just this evening. So, in general,
Nice.
I did send you a Discord friend request. By the way, I'd like to be like dev friend contact.
Oh, sure.
Surround
Absolutely.
myself with people. That's one of the things I wanted to add on to what you said. You said a lot of great things, but one of the things that I wanted to add is surround yourself with people who you look up to because they're not going to come down to you, so you have to come up to them. So
Yeah,
like there's a lot of stuff that Herman said tonight that some of these things I learned, which means I'm not there on his level yet on some of those things. So I have things to learn from him. So by associating with him, I'm improving myself, and then that brings my experience to him as well, and we share that wealth, and everybody grows. So don't be ever afraid to say, "Hey, this person is more experienced than me." That's okay. Reach out to them and say, like I just said, I'd like to be friends. I think we can learn from each other. I have questions. I might pick your brain once in a while. And that helps me become better. So then the next person come along and say, "Oh, you know these things. Yes, come along, be part of it." We should all be connecting and growing together. And that's what builds a great community. Because I've seen a lot of professionals, like AAA developer professionals, they'll be in the field and like say a studio gets closed, right? Now there's all these people that are out of work. Well, because we're all friends in the industry, I know Herman's a great guy. He knows about, optimization. Cool. I'll give him a ring. Hey, are you free for some freelance work to do this, whatever. So it helps everybody just kind of be a better community. And I think that's a great thing that I wanted to reinforce.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, and if you do have other questions, you can always DM them to me. Just be sure you say like, "Oh hey, I'm from sorry, I don't know the name of your club. Rebel Game Design."
Rebel Game Devs, yeah.
Okay, there we go. Oh, but also, Ben, I do have some extra slides prepped because you said show off. So if we don't have any questions, I could show those.
I think
yeah.
there
One of
are
my
still some
main
questions
questions
pending.
is
Oh yeah,
I
sure,
was wondering,
definitely.
if you have a public portfolio somewhere.
Oh yeah, I have that. I could link that elsewhere too.
Yeah, please.
Well, I've got a question. You already kind of touched on this, but maybe you could elaborate a little bit more. So how do you find the fun for your game? Like, so say you've got an idea, you've spent like a few months, you've prototyped 1 or 2 times, and it's still not fun. How do you like? What are some things you can do to like, I guess like experiment, or how can you like find the fun in a project that's just not evident?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a hard one. Like, design is not my main focus, so I don't know if I can provide too much insights. But personally, for me, it depends on the genre of the game you're trying to make. So there's like 2 factors into it. One, is your core gameplay loop sufficient? And then 2, is there enough polish and feedback to give to your players? Like, there's this great GDC talk about polishing, and they showed off a pretty generic top-down geometry shooter game. You shoot at things as like, it feels all right, but what if we ramped up the polish? And so it's like, the entire stage pulsates with the music. Every time you shoot, there's a boom, and then every time an enemy dies, particles shoot out everywhere, and it feels great to shoot at enemies. And so it's like, there's an aspect of polish there, but like for this core gameplay loop, I don't know. That's very hard to define for me because there's lots of, it could be lots of factors like for the Creature Collector roguelike game last year, we ran into the issue towards the end of the year of like our combat loop's not fun because the creatures just kind of run around randomly. You can't target with the ability, so it also feels just random, as well as the creature has to run to you, and so then there's a variable amount of time for the abilities to trigger. And so then right now we're trying to fix all those problems, but yeah, I don't know, sorry, I don't know if that was terribly specific in your
No,
case.
that's all good stuff.
Alright,
You bring up some good points. Thank you.
no problem.
Yeah, I kind of didn't realize like polish would have that much of an effect, but I think you're right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's also like make sure that the core loop, the core thing you're doing is satisfying. Like
Yeah.
an example that I know from recent is the God of War game for PS4, the newest one. I know they said they spent almost 6 months just developing the throwing mechanic of the axe and the retrieval. Everything down to the animation, to the sound, to a little bit of the oomph in his shoulder when he finally catches it. All those things make that thing satisfying, which is great because that's what you're going to be doing over and over again in the game. So if the thing you're going to be doing the most, if your loop is boring, the game is boring, period. And so you make sure your loop is good. So like with Mario, you think about it, technically any Mario game has a 1 second loop. It's jump. That's all he does. For everything, he jumps. So if the jump sucks, the whole Mario game sucks.
That's a good point.
Never thought about that.
Gunnar, I think you had some questions.
Yeah, again, I don't know hog time. Yeah, so I'd be very interested in your portfolio, and a lot of my questions are again very kind of compare and contrast because yeah, I come from Seattle primarily, where I went to DigiPen Institute of Technology. Now I'm wound up here in Vegas and went through UNLV, and now I'm a game designer at Galaxy Gaming. So very different than what you're doing, I'm sure. So I am curious. And yeah, you worked on a variety of different projects, which I love. I'm huge on that philosophy as well. So you just graduated, right?
Yes, that's
a few months
correct.
ago? Yeah, awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Do you know what you're looking to do? This is very
Tech art and animation. I want to build the rigs for characters.
about in like a AAA space or?
Oh, sorry. I'm
no,
okay with AAA space or medium-sized company.
Yeah, no, I'm curious on people's feel for that right now, but that's going into like a little too personal for
Gunnar,
right
you trying to
now.
recruit?
Well, actually, no, it's because I again, this is getting a little too personal for this subject. I'm kind of thinking about changing my career because I'm at Galaxy, which is casino games, which I do really enjoy, but I've been getting hounded by recruiters because of the great resignation in the economy. So I don't know, I'm considering some other offers, and I'm just kind of curious on other people's thoughts. I also just finished Press Reset, Jason Schreier's last book, so I'm just kind of triple A's on the mind.
I see. Yeah.
but yeah, no, that's really awesome. So yeah, do you have a public portfolio you could link in that?
Oh yes, I can. Yeah.
So yeah, another very kind of niche. Oh yeah, if you show on screen. All right, so ArtStation one.
Oh, where should I post?
In the weekly meeting text chat, right above this voice channel.
Yeah, and so if you look in the first two entries, I have an animation reel and a tech art reel.
So is that banner with the green-haired girl? Is that something you made?
No, it's our concept artist made that.
Oh.
This is for our Creature Collector game.
Gotcha. Yeah, it looks awesome.
Thank you.
Also, you're really, I don't know. You're hitting on a lot of points I like because I'm currently. I was talking to Rich about this a few days ago. I'm planning a creature collecting game myself, so I'm curious and looking into this. But yeah, at your school, you said you did 17 big projects in 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you were talking about yeah. Again, I'm just this is more just a curiosity thing because at DigiPen, I imagine somewhat similar, but interested in the differences that school is very project based, where starting in first year, freshman year, you do a 6-month project, then a second 6 months project, and then you do 3 one-year projects.
I see.
And
Yeah.
so you actually make the people come out of DigiPen usually don't have that long of portfolios. It's usually only like 4 to 6 games, but they're usually like very large games that they worked on for 12 months.
Yeah. I will say that I am not the norm at UCSC. I took whatever opportunity I could to make a game. The usual person who comes out of our games design program comes out with maybe 4 or 5 games, maybe.
Gotcha.
Some of them are like you only spend 2 weeks on, some of them you spend a quarter on, and then there's the senior capstone project you spend 2.5 quarters on.
Gotcha.
Because like in like any class I took, like my I don't know how to describe it. I guess my writing course about ethics and whatnot, I made a game for the final project.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah, no, I'm trying to really call my words because I can go off on a tangent too far. But yeah, no, I did similar stuff. I made games for like calculus and stuff. No, I love that. It's really awesome. But yeah, so you're in Santa Cruz now?
No, I'm in Las Vegas right now. I moved back.
Okay, all right, you're from Vegas. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
I kind of want to buy you.
Sorry to
coffee,
just
but-
interrupt you for a second, Gunnar, but I'd like to
Please.
open the floor up.
Please.
Does anyone else have any other questions or comments for Herman?
Oh yeah, I got a question.
Sure.
So I just want to talk about one of the points you made. You talked about like don't like make something right just because it's trendy, you know. But I just want to play devil's advocate here, right? So didn't that like actually work at like one point? Like Fortnite, they copied PUBG, that battle royale, and then suddenly everyone else started copying them, and they also got successful. Copying that battle royale formula, and all those people, So doesn't that sometimes work?
It depends on your definition of success.
Mhm.
I believe for you that means monetary success. I personally like making games for the art value, and I do not think making trendy copycat games adds value to the games industry as a whole.
All right, I see what you mean. Yeah.
I will chime in there that the big apple and oranges thing because we're mainly talking about students and getting started, which is going to be very different, versus being a $1 billion corporation. So yeah, I support trying to make things. I mean, I have a talk called "Clone It Till You Own It." I do support cloning as a learning tool.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Particularly with that talk is like really for like very beginners that have made 0 games. Like you should clone Pong and Galaga to learn the ropes, but definitely make things you care.
And I'll just throw my hat in the ring real quick that as someone who has been on both sides of hiring people for work and asking to be hired. So when you are learning, definitely copy. When we learn to draw, we'd start with tracing paper, right? You trace until you understand the principles behind it. But if you're copying to learn, make sure that it's clear that that's what you're doing. But if you clone something and try and put it out there and say, I'm going to make Flappy Bird, throw it in the store, and then you're disappointed that you're not making millions of dollars, well, that's because you did the same thing 5 million other people have done. And personally, as someone who is in a hiring position, I would never, ever hire someone who only has in their portfolio clones that they are clearly trying to peddle. But if you had clones that were, I cloned this, and here's maybe a diary or like a devlog to say, I did this to figure out the mechanics, to understand how it works and why it works, and to learn from that experience, definitely that's someone I'm calling. So it depends. The trendy thing really, I think, only really works if you're a multi-million-dollar corporation and you're able to capitalize on it quickly and efficiently, and then provide more and more content to it. But as someone coming up in the indie space, I don't support cloning as a means towards fame or success, however you define that. But definitely as a learning tool, it is invaluable.
Yeah, there's also something to be said of trying to catch up on trends. Like, games take a really long time to make, and by the time you're done with this trendy game, the trend might be over.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can see a bandwagon, it's too late to get on.
Yeah, I see what you guys mean.
Unless the thing that you're cloning is very old and debunked.
Oh yes,
I think Stardew Valley is a good example of Like there have been farming simulators done before then, but not with like the same kind of heart as what was it based on? Um,
Harvest Moon.
yeah, Harvest Moon. Thank you. Yeah, so Harvest Moon, you know, they led the field for a while, and they had like 3 or 4 games, and then they kind of disappeared, and there weren't any more Harvest Moon games made, and that was a good time to capitalize on that. And now it's the opposite. Now there's 1,000 Stardew Valley clones.
Yeah, I see what you guys are saying. I didn't actually believe in that. I'm just, I said I was playing devil's advocate. Just wanted to see what you guys
Yeah.
think
No, that's
about
great.
it. Yeah.
I love devil's advocates. Herman, I'm looking through your art station. Do you have a portfolio with like playable downloads, or am I missing that here?
Oh, they should be linked in each entry, I believe. Sorry, it's a little scattered all over the place. I also have my itch.io.
Oh, I see it. Yeah. I'm very bad at navigating this art station. I'm bad at navigating art station.
Yeah, no, I haven't found a good way of centralizing everything yet. I need to make my own website, but yeah.
Now I'm on Giorgio Clearanomos' itch page. That's a teammate, I think. Okay, I found yours.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
All right. Herman, I think you can just, if you want, you could just really quickly like go through the those like extra slides you got if you want to show us.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, before we conclude.
I don't know how long it'll take to load this one, but it's like a bunch of 2D cutscenes I made.
Dude, that looks really good.
Thank you. It was my first time in After Effects.
Love the art style, like that kind of cut paper look.
Yeah. Oh, to be clear, I didn't draw any of this. I took someone else's drawings and then rigged all of them.
Cool.
And then this is the cat that I animated for Cat's Cradle. Again, I didn't draw the cat. I took someone else's thing and then rigged it. As well as I designed a state machine for it. Excuse me, Google Slides. Alright. Then this is all for Magic Trick. Some animation loops. For the skateboarding friend-making game. And lastly, oh my god, Google, please. And lastly, these are the animation loops I made for the Creature Collector roguelike game, with some of the enemies in the top right, bottom left, and then the top left, bottom right are the creatures you can collect.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like that turtle bird.
Yeah, those
Thank you.
out of context, you could have convinced me that's from an upcoming Pokemon Go update or something.
That's we get that a lot. Yeah, it's like we had some great modelers and a great concept artist, so I'll give them all the credit in this.
Yeah, the design is very Temtem.
Nice.
Cool, Herman. Well, dude, thank you so much for spending the time out of your day to not only come and talk to us, but to put together. And I mean, it sounds like you practiced, like you put some time on this. So thank you for coming up with
I don't
quality.
know. I did not.
Well, thank you for fooling us.
No problem.
But yeah, please, like if you can, connect with some of the members, and I'd like to connect with you as well.
But yeah, sure. Yeah, like if you're interested about anything that I've done or any of the games that I've done, because they're all scattered all over the place, you can DM me, ask me for a link, or ask for advice, things like that.
Cool.
Just again, remember, mention, hey, I'm from Rebel Game Dev, so I know who you are.
For sure.
All right.
Well, all right. I think
Uh,
that's a good place to call it for this week. Next week, we're going to do the part 2 of that scriptable object tutorial. And then, well, actually, no, next week's the asset shuffle. So, asset shuffle, scripting tutorial, and then one of the final things we'll do for this semester is how to build your game to WebGL and put it on itch, because that is one of the most important things about making anything is having a
Yes.
place to show it.
Oh, WebGL.
It's not the most pleasant, but it's the most flexible. But so anyways, guys, everyone, thank you for coming. Thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for supporting Herman and listening and being engaged. And I hope to see you guys next week.
yup. Thanks, Herman.
No problem.
Yeah, thanks.
Night, y'all.
Thank you, Herman. Snaps
Good
and
night.
claps in the chat.